You're watching The Legal Breakdown. Glenn, we've got breaking news today as the judge in New York, Judge Merchan, has announced that Donald Trump will be sentenced on January 10th. He also noted, however, that he won't be subject to a period of incarceration. So right off the bat, what do you expect that the sentence itself will actually be?
So I expect it will be what's called an unconditional discharge. The reason I suspect that is because on the last page of Judge Merchan's 18-page order, he said, it would be inappropriate for me to announce exactly what sentence I will impose because I can only do that at the time of sentencing. But I want the parties to know that I am intending to impose an unconditional discharge. That is a highly unusual sentence. And what it involves is the judge saying, listen, I understand there are 34 felony guilty verdicts that were delivered by the jury. I understand that I have a full panoply of possible punishment left to my discretion, but in deference to the defendant who is about to be sworn in as the next president of the United States, I will in essence hand down no punishment, not even a probationary period or any requirements while on probation. In essence, it will bring the case to an immediate end. Now, it has the positive benefit of Donald Trump forever being a convicted felon 34 times over, because you're not technically convicted until you have been sentenced and the case is complete. So what that will do, it will instantly give Donald Trump his opportunity to appeal the conviction, but unless an appeals court intervenes and reverses the 34 felony convictions, for all of remaining time, Donald Trump will be a convicted felon 34 times over.
Glenn, I know I speak for a lot of people watching right now in not being able to really understand how it could be that the sentence for Donald Trump could in effect be no sentence. How is that even an option for someone who's just convicted of 34 felony counts?
Yeah, it's a great question. Let me put it this way. When there are offenses of conviction that are so minor that a judge determines that, the very nature of the conviction, the documentation of it, and everything that comes with being a convicted felon, or if they were misdemeanor offenses, a convicted misdemeanant, is enough punishment for a person to suffer. So what judges will sometimes do under those circumstances, when the judge deems that no further punishment is necessary, they will, in essence, set a condition saying, I'm putting you on, in essence, unsupervised probation. And as long as you keep your nose clean for 6 months or for a year, you don't get in trouble with the law again, then you won't suffer another day of penalties or punishment or consequences. This is even one step sort of removed from that. It's the judge saying, I am terminating the case with no sentence, no probation, no conditions. And each jurisdiction in the 50 states, because remember, this is a state court conviction in New York. It's not a federal conviction. Each of the 50 states has its own sentencing scheme. And obviously, New York envisions that just terminating the case with no punishment is a lawful option. And it's the option the judge selected. And really the reason he selected it is because he said, look, I'm going to look at the reasons behind presidential immunity. And he went through the Office of Legal Counsel memo, and he said, well, the reasons behind not prosecuting a sitting president, as distinguished from president-elect immunity, which Judge Merchan said does not exist. It's not a thing. There's no precedent. But there is an OLC memo, Office of Legal Counsel at the Department of Justice, saying, there are 3 reasons behind not prosecuting a sitting president. And he went through those 3 reasons. Very briefly, those reasons are, 1, you don't want to actually impose a criminal sentence of incarceration against the sitting president. That would be quite unwieldy, having the president of the United States incarcerated while trying to run the country. 2, there is a public stigma associated with the initiation of criminal proceedings. He said that factor doesn't exist here because the criminal proceedings were initiated long ago. the trial is concluded. He was convicted by a jury months ago, so that factor no longer comes into play. And 3, the mental and physical demands of assisting with the preparation of a defense for the various stages of a criminal proceeding. And the judge again said, not at issue here because the criminal proceeding is at an end. He said, those factors that apply to whether we can prosecute a sitting criminal president, as I apply them to a president-elect, I believe that the equities fall in favor of finalizing this conviction right now, but imposing no additional punishment on the president-elect.
Glenn, real quick question. Does Donald Trump have to be present at this sentencing on January 10th?
Ordinarily, a defendant always has to be present at his or her sentencing date, but at the tail end of Judge Merchan's 18-page ruling, he said, and I'm giving the defendant the option of appearing virtually rather than physically. So this is not going to require much heavy lifting from Donald Trump.
What if he opts not even to abide by the rule of appearing virtually and just outright ignores the entire thing?
Well, then he should be held in contempt of court. Again, he was held in contempt of court 10 times previously by Judge Merchan. And
clearly had quite the impact on him.
Learned his lesson. I'm sure Senator Collins would let us know that he has fully learned his lesson. He's about to, shape up. And, he went largely unpunished for his 10 counts of criminal contempt of court. I think he was fined $1,000 per, which he probably found in the couch cushions down at Mar-a-Lago. I think it extraordinarily unlikely that his lawyers would let him, go so rogue that he would violate this final order of the court to appear at least virtually for his sentencing date.
Okay, and finally, let's finish off with this. In terms of the prospect of an appeal, do you think that Trump's team will be successful in their effort to undo these criminal convictions against him?
It's hard to say. It seems like Judge Merchan called a very clean and conservative case, conservative in the legal sense, gave Donald Trump every opportunity to mount a defense, and the jury, in virtually a New York minute, convicted him 34 times over. So it seems like it will be a strong case for the prosecution on appeal, but you can never precisely predict what an appellate court might find interesting in what was a most interesting trial. But there are a couple of things even short of appealing the verdict and appealing the conviction once Donald Trump is sentenced. Brian, I have to believe that Donald Trump's lawyers will beat feet probably as early as this afternoon or tomorrow to a New York appeals court to see if they can convince an appeals court to reverse Judge Merchan's decision to proceed to sentencing. Assuming a New York appeals court opts not to intervene, and I don't think they should after reading Judge Merchan's 18-page order, then I have to believe Donald Trump will try to seek review in the United States Supreme Court, look for, I don't know, perhaps 5 conservative justices to weigh in and put a stop to Donald Trump's sentencing. Now, there would be no constitutional principle that would require the Supreme Court to weigh in to this state court decision.
That hasn't stopped him before.
No, and it won't stop him again in the future. I do think this case is likely to proceed to sentencing. Of course, once Donald Trump is sentenced, even if it is just an unconditional, no punishment sentence, which brings the case to an end, oh, you can bet Donald Trump's lawyers will appeal it, will have it work its way up the New York State Court of Appeals ladder, and will try everything he can to try to prevent from being a convicted felon for the rest of his days.
The irony of all of this is that even though the crimes were clear, even though he will be given a sentence of effectively nothing, still that's not good enough for somebody who views himself as the victim, even though he has really turned the legal system upside down in blind deference to him. But it's apparently never enough, and he will remain the perpetual victim even as, again, this entire legal system continues to confer all of these undue benefits onto him that only he is able to enjoy. Illinois. So of course, as this process continues to play itself out, we'll make sure to cover it. For those watching right now, if you want to support our work and stay on top of this, please make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on the screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.